The online meeting of RBKC's licensing subcommittee. I'm Councillor Sof McVeigh and I'll be chairing today's committee. It's also being streamed live and it's being held on Microsoft Teams. The case before us today is to vary a licence for Earls Court Food and Wine, 216 Earls Court Road, SW5. I'm also joined on the committee today, and if you could please introduce yourselves, Councillor Rossi and Councillor Wason, please, and declare any declaration of interest too. Thank you.
I am Councillor Rossi from Redcliffe Ward, so I have to declare that I know Councillor Spalding and Councillor Wade, and also David Olavia from Inkerman House, who is one of the objectors, but I have not discussed this application with them.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Councillor Ian Wason. I'm a councillor in Camden Ward. I must declare that obviously I know the other councillors have not discussed this case and no other declarations to make.
Thank you very much. I declare I have no interest in the case. Likewise, I know the other councillors but have not discussed this case with them. In case I lose connection, I would like to nominate Councillor Rossi to be the substitute chair, and Councillor Wason, if you could possibly second that.
I'm happy to second that.
Fantastic, thank you. So I confirm Councillor Rossi will be the chair if I lose connection. And everyone should have got information about how to join again if connection is lost before, when all the procedures were sent out. And just a few ground rules before we get going. We don't use the chat function on this committee. It is a public meeting, so please bear that in mind. And please keep your microphones on mute, and please put the camera on when you're speaking if you wish to do so. Of course, it is completely up to you. I'll just briefly outline the procedure. First, we'll have the licensing officer. I believe it's Mr. Phelan today, is that correct?
Good morning, that's correct, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you for confirming your attendance. He will give a brief outline of the application. And then we will ask the applicant's legal advisor, Mr. Thomas O'Malley, to present his submission. Please, can you confirm your attendance, please?
Councillor, I confirm my attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're also joined by your client, Shazed Shad, is that correct? And can they confirm their attendance too, please?
Yes, I can confirm that to attend.
Thank you very much. And then questions will be asked by the committee to the applicant, and then questions will be asked by the responsible authorities to the applicant, and then objectors can also ask questions. Then the second part will be the responsible authorities will be presenting their submission. We have with us today, and if you could confirm your attendance, Philip Richardson from Noise and Nuisance and PC Ian Davis from the police.
Yes, good morning, Councillor. I'm here, Philip Richardson.
Thank you.
PC and Davis, I'm here. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you. Your microphones, PC Davis, your microphones wasn't very clear, so maybe when you do your submission, we'll just double check that. Thank you. Yeah, and then likewise, thank you. And then likewise, questions will be asked to yourself from all the parties. And then finally, the objectors will submit their submissions. So we have Councillor Linda Wade and Councillor Malcolm Spalding. Please, can you confirm your attendance?
Yes, Madam.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm here, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And likewise, questions will be asked by the committee, by the applicant and by the responsible authorities to yourselves. And then we will come round to our legal officer to go through any questions or cover any points that have been raised, and then finally to our governance team as well. And can we please just confirm attendance with our legal team, please? Lindsay Lemazurier?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And again, all our excellent licensing governance officers. We've already heard from Anne Wright and Yasmin. And can we also confirm that Gareth's on the call as well, I believe?
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Thank you very much. And finally, there'll be no summing up at the end, and the meeting will end. So thank you. We will now get going. Mr. Phelan, are you ready to do your submission, please? And again, please, can I remind everybody that the committee has read all the papers. So please just draw our attention to the relevant points. And whoever is controlling the screen will endeavour to get the page of the committee papers on the screen. So thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Today's application is made by the Chelsea Food and Wine Company Limited for the variation of a premises licence at Earls Court Food and Wine, 216 to 218, Earls Court Road, SW59QB. A licensing subcommittee recently considered an application at this premises, which sought to extend the hours for the sale of alcohol off the premises until 2 a.m. and a removal of condition 22 on the 27th of May 2020. The committee decided to grant permission to extend the hours for the sale of alcohol until 1 a.m. Monday to Friday for a period of 1 year. The applicant withdrew the request to remove condition 22. The premises currently trade with a premises licence which permits the sale of alcohol off the premises from 8 a.m. until 1 a.m. Monday to Friday for a period of 1 year, ending on the 26th of May 2021. Condition 22 on the licence also extends the hours on Friday and Saturday nights to 1 a.m. the following morning when the all-night tube is running to and from Earls Court Station. Late night refreshment both indoors and outdoors Monday to Sunday, 11 p.m. until 2 a.m. and the playing of recorded music indoors with unrestricted hours. The premises are open 24 hours a day to members of the public. The applicant initially sought to vary the non-standard timing to permit the sale of alcohol and late night refreshment indoors 24/7 on a temporary basis for 1 calendar year. The applicant has since amended the application to remove the changes proposed for the provision of late night refreshment. For clarity, the following change is now sought. Sell by retail of alcohol off the premises 24 hours per day. No additional steps were proposed to promote the licensing objectives as part of this variation application. I can confirm that this application did receive objections from both PC Davis of the Metropolitan Police and Mr. Phillips Richardson, an area senior officer of Environmental Health's Noise and Nuisance team. A summary of each representation can be found at Appendix C, pages 31 to 32, and Appendix D, pages 33 to 34, respectively. 17 representations have been received which oppose this application. This includes 2 ward councillors and 4 local residents association. A summary of their representations can be found on pages 5 to 10, with copies attached at Appendix E on pages 35 to 55 of the main bundle. Council records indicate that the premises did not receive a noise complaint over the preceding 24-month period. And finally, 2 temporary event notices have been submitted in the preceding 24-month period. A summary of these events can be found at Appendix F, page 56. That concludes the summary of this application. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Phelan. That was very helpful. So now we will turn to Mr. Thomas O'Malley, please, to present your submission. Again, you have 10 minutes in order to do this. And please, can I remind you also that we have read the papers and also your additional papers as well. We have obviously received and read. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and thank you to the officer for that introduction, and also for confirming that you and the members have obviously read these submissions that were sent by me on behalf of the applicant. You will, of course, note that those submissions were fairly lengthy, so I think you'll be pleased to hear this morning that I can reduce what I think needs to be said to the committee, and having heard very carefully your indication that there's no need to repeat what is already contained within those written submissions. On the written submissions, I would like to say just one thing, and that is, having reread those submissions and having reread the letters that were received from the councillors and from the local residents, I think that some of those submissions can appear to be slightly, how shall I put this, slightly trying to suggest that there are no issues whatsoever in Earls Court, and if that was in any way felt by those reading it, that was not the intention. And I would like to say from the outset that I, and certainly my clients, are fully aware of the very good work that Councillor Spalding and Councillor Wade, and indeed and no doubt the other councillor for this ward, do in Earl's Court. We're also very aware of the tremendous work that the local associations do. And I would like to say from the outset that regardless of what the decision is today, we would and will always want to work closely with the ward councillors and with the Residents Association, recognising the fact that the issues that remain sadly in the immediate vicinity of Earl's Court Tube Station are ongoing and need a joined up approach with all parties, not only residents but also local businesses. With that in mind, of course, it is of course fair to say on behalf of the applicant that whilst we accept there are issues, what we don't accept, and we say this quite robustly, is that those issues are caused by these premises. And we say that with good reason. You've heard in the introduction that there have been no complaints made in relation to these premises to the Environmental Health Officer in terms of noise nuisance or indeed public nuisance generally. You also will have read in the representation received from Ian Davis of the Metropolitan Police Service that there have been no complaints or no concerns put to him or the police generally in relation to these premises over the past 18 months. You've also heard as well in the introduction that, of course, these premises have over the years had numerous applications for temporary extensions granted, and that they have caused no issues, and that there have been various applications submitted over the years to the licensing authority, and these have been granted. I think it's also fair to mention, on the last occasion, whilst we did originally apply for 2 o'clock for sales of alcohol, the reason that 1 o'clock was in fact granted was the application itself was amended by the applicant to 1 o'clock. Now, it is of course the case that any application must be decided on the licensing objectives and on the licensing objectives alone. I think that sometimes the question is raised, and I think sometimes fairly, as to what is the reason for the application and what is the need for the application. I, and of course members of the committee, recognise the fact that this isn't a licensing objective and it's not something that should be taken into account. However, in fairness, I think it's a legitimate question, and the answer to that question is simply to do with economics. The premises, like with retail throughout the United Kingdom, is struggling enormously, and my client, as a business and as a responsible business, needs to look at every single avenue that may produce and may help the business in any way. That might be 0.5 percentage point or 1 percentage point, but all of these little things matter, and anyone involved in any business will readily appreciate that it is all the little parts put together that can make all the difference. In terms of the licensing objectives, there are, of course, and the committee will appreciate, 4. If I may deal with them in reverse, so to speak. The protection of children from harm, I appreciate that has been raised by some residents, but it is not, and I think your legal advisor will readily agree, it is not something that needs to concern the committee today. That licensing objective relates to whether a premises themselves are suitable for children to be in. And the obvious example would be a premises that perhaps provides gambling, or a premises that is largely alcohol-led. Likewise with public safety, this has been raised, but I don't think this is something that needs to concern the committee today. That relates only in relation to the safety of the premises themselves, and whether, of course, the public are safe to be in that premises. So that leaves us with two. We have crime and disorder and public nuisance. And if I could take them both together, to reiterate the point that I made earlier, both of these, we've had confirmation from the relevant officers and from the police that there have been no complaints made or no concerns raised by either of the statutory authorities that primarily deal with both of these objectives. In terms of the complaints raised by the councillors, the associations, and of course the residents, I think the point is a rather simple one from our point of view. That this application seeks to permit the sale of alcohol between 1 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning. That, of course, is what is under consideration this morning by the committee. This application is not a review of the licence. If there were complaints and if there were issues relating to these premises, they should be rightly investigated, and that will lead to review. But we're not here at that stage this morning. And as I've made the point in my submissions, there has been no evidence whatsoever which has been produced by anybody that would suggest that there is either crime or disorder or public nuisance relating to these premises. And finally, the only other point that I would like to make is in relation to the licensing objectives, and that is, of course, in relation to public health. We are, of course, very aware of what is happening throughout the country in relation to the pandemic. It is, of course, correct that all of the regulations which are announced by the government on, it seems, almost like a daily basis, but these are strictly adhered to by these premises and will continue to be so. But it is also correct in law that public health is not a licensing objective, and it would be quite wrong to take into account anything that is in relation to COVID-19. Madam Chair, that concludes my submissions. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malin, and very exactly on time, which was interesting and impressive. Thank you. I would like to kick off with a question myself before I turn to the committee members. And I'm glad to hear you say that your client is happy to work with all the residents' associations and councillors, because I, as chair of this committee, I have to say I did sit on the one in May, and I am surprised to see you before us again, actually. And I understand what you're saying, that it is obviously not a review and it is to vary the licence. But I'm surprised that you find it surprising that so many people have objected to this, even though it is not a review, because when anything comes up, councillors and residents are going to submit their objections. So my question to you is, why are you before us again now? And I know you talked about need and reasons not being part of the licensing objectives, but if you could just humour me why this particular time, and why not waiting until the end of the temporary licence?
It's simply to do with economics. That whilst we're obviously enormously grateful that we have the temporary extension until 1 o'clock, which obviously will run out in the next few months, but nevertheless, it is now quite clear that what has been felt by all businesses throughout the country, it is going to take a very long time for anyone to get back on their feet, and that is the reason, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I understand it is an incredibly difficult time for all businesses.
If I may add, in terms of what you say about the objectors, it is correct that, and it would be wrong of me to suggest that we were surprised. We weren't surprised that people would object, and we're not surprised that many would take the view that you've only just been granted the 1 o'clock. Why on earth are you now going back for the 24 hours? But the application was made with the very best of intentions in terms of trying to do what they can to protect and to help the business.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn to my fellow committee members. If you have a specific question to ask the applicant.
Yes, could I ask a question of Mr. O'Malin? You have acknowledged that there are perhaps certain issues in the Earls Court area, but they're not caused by these premises. So, do you see this premise in the midst of, an area of problems simply as being in neutral? In other words, it neither takes away nor adds to the problems that actually exist in the area. In terms of, I'll just finish, in terms of public disorder and nuisance, and you say there have been no specific incidents that can be linked to the shop, but in the opening sentence of the objection by the police, they are objecting on the grounds of public disorder and nuisance. Thank you.
So in response, I would say that these premises have no effect either way. And I say that for this reason. The primary problems that are experienced in Earls Court, and in particular outside the Underground Station, with beggars and with vagrants and with those that are alcohol or drug dependent, those problems actually occur primarily during rush hours, because those are the times when people who are begging are most likely to be able to receive money and receive sympathy. It is also correct that there are in the immediate vicinity of the Underground Station clinics that deal specifically with those in society that have alcohol and drug addictions. But it is also correct to say that those clinics close in the early evening. My suggestion to you and to the committee is that if, and I accept there is an issue, but those issues are actually most likely to be found from 5 o'clock in the afternoon up until about 8 o'clock in the afternoon. And the other pinch point, if I may, that if there were a concern, is going to be when the other licensed premises in the area, and there are a number that you will see on the plan of Earls Court, that there are a number of public houses and restaurants in the area, and these, of course, all close between 11:30 and midnight or shortly thereafter. So if there were to be a problem, those problems are going to occur, in my submission, during those particular times. Of course, what the decision this morning that needs to be reached is whether the licensing objectives are going to be in any way put aside when between 1 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning. And my suggestion is that, in fact, the problem times, as it were, have actually long since passed. And not only that, when we have appeared before in front of various licensing committees, it has been accepted that the premises are well managed and well run. And it was for that very reason that an exception was made to the underlying recommendation within policy that licensed premises should ordinarily stop at midnight in terms of the sale of alcohol. Now, that decision was made that alcohol could be permitted in these particular premises up until 1 o'clock at the weekends. More recently, it was permitted on a time-limited basis for 1 o'clock throughout the week. Previously, it was accepted by the committee that late-night refreshment may be provided, which of course is licensed activity, until 2 o'clock in the morning. And of course, we have to remember that these premises operate 24 hours a day, and they've always operated 24 hours a day. And you will have read in my submissions that the government guidance itself states quite clearly that ordinarily premises that operate, whatever hours their premises operate, you would ordinarily expect a premises license to mirror those hours.
Mr. Mayland, can I come in there? Because you're giving a very long answer to my question, but I do object to you saying that the pinch points or the difficult times are the rush hour. I have to say that I walk up and down that road every single day. I have lived in close to Earls Court for more than 25 years. And when I say every single time of day, I am very aware of the street drinkers and the beggars outside the station. And all I can say that your description of when the worst times are do not fit in with my understanding, being a long-standing resident and knowing that road like the back of my hand.
Well, certainly, like you, I was a resident, funnily enough, on Redcliffe Gardens for many years, for just shy of 10 years. And like you, I used Earls Court tube station every single day for those 10 years. And I walked up and down and on that street, and I'm also very familiar with the activities that take place. Whilst I'm not suggesting for a second that miraculously nothing happens between 8 o'clock in the evening and when the pubs close at midnight. But what I am suggesting, and I say this quite robustly, is that and certainly in my experience, that the real problems are experienced during those two specific time periods, either during rush hour.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here because I can see we can go backwards and forwards about matters of opinion and until the cows come home. And I would like to bring in Councillor Rossi. I'll come back to you in a minute. I'd like to bring in Councillor Wason for any questions, please. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah, I've got a specific question. On Appendix E from Councillor Linda Wade, she says in their present conditions they're supposed to hold meetings with local RAs, etc., and they're required to clean outside their frontage. This neither appears to have happened. Can you just confirm for me, and I'll highlight for you, it's condition 14, which is the pavement outside the premises must be kept in clean condition by carrying out daily sweeping and washing of the pavement. And condition 32, which is at least every 6 months. So that's the previous time you were at this committee was over 6 months ago, I think. So you should have held, your client should have held at least one meeting with local RAs in that time. Can you just confirm or whether those two conditions have been met or have not been met?
So dealing with the cleaning, this was raised in my written submissions, and we do not accept that the area outside is not cleaned. It is cleaned on a daily basis by the applicants. Secondly, in relation to the requirement that a meeting is arranged, you will have read in my written submissions on page 8 at paragraph 15 that sets out, in fact, the timings in relation to that meeting. It is correct.
Can I just clarify, these are the additional papers that was emailed out to all parties?
So the point there is raised, Councillor, at 15 and it is addressed there. But it is the intention that a meeting following the current lockdown, obviously depending on what tiers, etc., that a meeting would be arranged in December.
Councillor Wason, your microphone's muted.
Mute. Got it. Great. So I'm happy with condition 14, and with condition 32, you're confirming your client hasn't held a meeting in the last 6 months, but there have been extenuating circumstances due to the lockdown, and they've been unable to facilitate one virtually.
Well, what we're suggesting is something slightly different insofar as there isn't a requirement to have that meeting until the 6th of January, which is 6 months after the actual decision letter was issued, which of course is when the licence will formally take effect. But regardless of that, obviously it has been exceptionally difficult to have or to arrange a meeting. It was hoped that these meetings would be in person. Clearly that seems less likely now, but it is certainly the intention that a meeting would take place, and if it needs to be done virtually, that would happen in December.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayland, I'd like to ask a question to your client, if that's all right. Shadez Shad?
That of course is perfectly okay.
Okay. Thank you. I'd just like to ask you, because again, as I said, I chaired the previous committee when we agreed in these exceptional circumstances and these exceptional times to extend your alcohol license by an hour. I would just like to hear from you how that has been, please, since May. Maybe you're mute. Yep.
Yes, hi. Until now, we don't have any problem at all. It's all going well.
I'm sorry, your connection was a little bit difficult there. Did you say you've had no problem? It's all going well?
Yes, thank you. That's correct.
Right. And in terms of, because again, reading all the objections, the concern is primarily about street drinkers. Can you please tell me a little bit about if a street drinker would come into your premises, what would your procedure be?
We don't allow them to come in our premises at all for anything, not about the drink only. We don't allow them to come to buy any fag or anything like this, or they're want to buy some chocolates, so we don't allow the regulars to come in the store.
Okay, and how do you stop them? Because my understanding is you have a counter and open doors. We
have a notice outside our premises, and we clearly tell them, because we know who are the street drinkers and we don't allow them to come in. We know 6, 7 or 8 of them. They'll come various times, and we try to control them. We ban them not to come in the store. Okay, thank you very much. I think the committee have asked all our questions now, and I'd like to turn to the responsible authorities to ask any questions. These are questions, please. You'll be doing your submission just in a few moments. Thank you. PC Davis, would you have any questions?
No questions from police, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson, any questions?
Sorry, no, I lost your volume there, so I didn't hear what you said. Sorry. I've not got anything to ask now. I can cover what I need to say in my section in a second.
Thank you very much. Objectors, Councillor Wade, do you have any questions, please? Again, you will be doing your submission shortly.
Yes, I'd like to pick up on the question about how they determine the street drinkers and how they implement it. I'd like them to expand on that. One, how do they identify? And two, their procedure, and do they and how do they communicate to their staff? How many staff do they have per day? And how do they communicate between shifts as to who the street drinkers are?
I suspect that those questions are probably best answered by my client directly. Mr. Shah.
Thank you.
Hi. As we have a team of the members of the team who is well trained in it, and we do the internal trainings every 3 to 6 months, and we know the vagrants and the beggars outside, and obviously with daily basis, and we stop them not to come in the store, and we clearly tell them not to use our premises, and we're doing our best to stop them not to come in the premises. Thank you.
And I think a little bit more information about your staff management and your when you change shifts, please.
As we change the shifts, and obviously, if anything we see the problem, then obviously it's been passed to we keep the logbooks, and so far we don't have any issues, and we have a signs on which clearly say, okay, fine, we don't allow them to come in the premises, and internal team is very strong to deal with them daily basis if they come in the premises or they wanted to use in the premises. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wade, any more questions?
I still am, unfortunately, it wasn't a very good line, so I couldn't capture everything that the applicant said. I'm still concerned about perhaps the training of the staff. Sometimes people who are begging outside the station aren't necessarily the people who are street drinking. So I think I'd like to see this in writing as to the shifts, how many people there are on the shifts, what type of training that they have, who the supervisor is per shift, and whether or not, in fact, they have pictures of the street drinkers so that they can actually identify.
Okay, can Mr. Malin or Mr. Shad?
Normally we have.
I'm afraid, Mr. Shah, your connection is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly broken.
Normally. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Generally, we politely tell them not to use our premises, and we do general. We have a general conditions as well, and we and our normally we have a supervisor name is Samir, and the store manager his name is Hamid, and normally at least 4 days I'm here on the premises. I'm sitting in the office myself. Sometimes I go until morning as well. I'm sitting, I'm doing my paperwork and stuff. And I see clearly we're doing our best to stop people who is drinking outside. And I can understand what you mean is then all the beggars are not the drinker, but majorities are there. That's what we try to stop them, and we're controlling our best. And I think we're doing very good so far.
Okay, thank you. And to Councillor Wade's suggestion about actually sharing a management plan with herself and local representatives, because I understand that Mr. Malin did comment that a joined up approach to this issue needs to happen, and it would be good if you could be part of the solution, not the problem.
So, Councillor, if I could jump in there, yes, of course, we would be able to provide details not only on the staff training that's undertaken, and to confirm a number of staff at these premises are personal licence holders. There is full CCTV in operation that covers the inside and the outside of the premises, and so those that cause issues can be identified, and indeed footage from the CCTV is sent to the Metropolitan Police for their own investigations. In fact, one was only sent yesterday. In terms of the shift patterns as well, that of course can all be shared with, I would suggest, probably the ward council.
Okay, great, fantastic, thank you. Councillor Spalding, have you got any questions, please?
Yes, if I may, Chairman, I've got 3 very specific questions.
And remember, you will have a chance to do your submission, so can you please make the questions as succinct as possible? Thank you.
They are absolutely precise, if they could answer each one in turn. The first question is, given that the applicant acknowledges the extent of the problem of ASB, vagrancy, street drinking, begging, etc., in this immediate area, and given that the police and the environmental health officers, the licensing officers, objection is based on this becoming a destination venue for buying alcohol all night, does the applicant think that the ASB and vagrancy problems will be reduced if this shop becomes a destination venue for 24-hour alcohol sales?
I'm not happy to answer that now, or do you want to, or do you want to?
Each question in turn, if possible. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of will it be reduced, we say that there will be no difference, because what we're suggesting is that the hours in relation to this variation are between 1 and 8 o'clock in the morning. We don't accept that there is an issue during those particular hours. We do not accept that this small convenience store will become a destination venue.
Okay, thank you. The second question, very specific. In the applicant's business plan, what is his expected sales revenue for alcohol between 1 AM and 8 AM? i.e. for that 7 hours of alcohol off sales, what's his expected revenue, and how does that compare in terms of his revenue in the other 16 or 17 hours of normal trading?
I don't have the answer to that, but I'm going to bring in my client, who might be able to put more meat on the bone, so to speak. Mr. Shah?
Hi. I think it's going to be increased still, at least.
We're having great difficulty in hearing Mr. Shah.
Yes, Mr. Shah, you'd need to find some better internet connection, and we'll have to come back to you for your questions. Or can you get on a mobile phone? Anne Wright, can you make some suggestions, please, here, because this is quite crucial.
Hi, yes, good morning, Chairman. I don't know if Mr. Shah would like to leave the meeting and come back in again. Sometimes that does improve things. We can try that. If that doesn't work, we can give him a number to dial with a PIN code that he can call from any phone, whether it's mobile or landline, and he can join us just through the telephone, and obviously he wouldn't be able to see the screen or anything, but we can try that as well. So I don't know if he would like to leave the meeting now, try and rejoin, and then see if that helps first.
Mr. O'Malley, I don't think he's even heard any of that. Have you got a phone number for him, and you can phone him?
I do. I'll message him now, Councillor, and I'll tell him to telephone in. I think it's probably the best.
So, Anne, can you give Mr. O'Malley all the details?
Yes, they would have been on my original email, but I will send them through again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, in fact, I have those. My apologies. This sometimes happens.
So we won't adjourn. We'll just wait to see if we can sort this out before we adjourn, if we need to adjourn. But hopefully we can sort this out in a few minutes.
Oh, hi. Do you have the link to get back in? Because no one can hear you at the hearing. So if you telephone is the best. So there is instructions on the email as to how to telephone in. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll hear from you in a second. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Yes, these things do happen.
Mr. O'Malley, if that does not work, if you could email me your client's telephone number, I can try and call him from the meeting as well.
Yep, I will get that for you now. Isn't technology a wonderful thing? We'll be glad when we're all back in those committee rooms again, I can assure you. Okay, Anne, I'm sending it to you now.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Shah, is that you?
Is now joining.
Yes, sorry for inconvenience.
Welcome back. That's great. Fantastic.
Excellent.
So you were halfway through answering Councillor Spalding's question, but we didn't hear any of it. So if you could answer that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Normally, generally, weekly sales are for alcohol between 5,000 to 7,000 pounds. It depends if the beginning of the month or is like 5,000 to 7,000 pounds alcohol sale for weekly. But if we increase the license from 1 to late until 8, I think we'll increase the 1,000 pounds weekly taking for alcohol.
Okay, we'll leave the meeting and we rejoin again.
Thank you.
is now exiting.
So sorry about that. So I think the answer was that they hope to increase takings by £1,000 per week, which is, well, we do the maths, it's a little over £100 a day.
Thank you. Councillor Spalding, I believe you had one more question.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. O'Malley, when you said there was no evidence of linking these premises to antisocial behaviour, etc., I mean, it was logged and it was given in evidence by your side at the last hearing that there had been a stabbing in the street and people had rushed into the shop, and that the victim actually had been saved by your client because the victim had been hidden in the back room. Would you accept that this indicates that there is, if not actual, ongoing problems with control of access to the premises, that it potentially is possible that vagrants and beggars and all sorts of mentally ill people and so on, and street drinkers can wander in and out of the shop at will because there are no doors, there is no control on the doors, and the staff are all protected and hidden behind screens at a raised counter. And so do you accept that that potential for uncontrolled access to the shop does exist?
In short, no. The occasion that you refer to that was brought up on at the last hearing was very much a one-off. It was in relation to someone who had been stabbed on Earls Court Road, who then ran into the shop. The fact that they ran into this applicant's shop is merely a coincidence. They could have easily ran into Cafe Nero next door, or ran into the Co-op slightly further down. But the point was made at the last hearing was that these premises, because they had extensive CCTV and because the staff were trained, they were able to deal with that specific incident. But there was no indication at all that that premises had anything whatsoever to do with that particular incident on that occasion.
Thank you for that. Councillor Spalding, we're coming to your submission in a moment, so perhaps we could continue. Yes?
Thank you.
Continue. Yes?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I seem to be echoing. So we're now going to turn to the Responsible Authorities report, please. So, PC Ian Davis, can you please give your report?
Thank you very much, Chair. The police position in relation to the extended hours is the prevention aspect of the licensing objectives. Obviously, the position of the premises in relation to not attracting further crime and disorder and nuisance is, in my opinion, not necessarily correct. You've obviously got McDonald's, which closes slightly later at, I understand, 2 o'clock-ish. So there is a propensity for people to kind of hang around, and there'll be a propensity for people to turn up in the smaller hours to purchase alcohol, potential for shoplifting, whether it be the actual alcohol sales aspect of it or so forth. Hence that is the kind of primary concern in relation to the premises operating beyond the 1 o'clock remit of the current license. So hence, from a police perspective, we'll be obviously guided by the license subcommittee's decision in relation to any extension, but the position is to remain that it is operating at a maximum that is my submission.
Thank you very much, PC Davis. We're just checking that Mr. Shah is still with us, but I'm just confirming that he is with us. Mr. Shah, can you confirm that you are still with us and you can hear us?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Thank you. Right. So we're also now actually going to hear Mr. Richardson's submission at the same time, and then we'll ask questions jointly to both parties, if that's okay. Thank you. Mr. Richardson.
Good morning, Chair. As you've said, you've read my representation and things like that, so I'll not dwell on it too long. As stated earlier on, we in the noise and nuisance team don't receive complaints about the premises, but this application would mean that it is going to be open substantially longer than anywhere else. And obviously, like Mr. O'Malley mentioned, we deem it that it could turn into sort of a destination venue, especially when the night tube operates and there's nowhere else for people returning from sort of central London or further afield to buy alcohol, to take elsewhere, or to drink in the street, or do whatever they want to do, or jump back on the tube and go elsewhere. My representation as such wasn't wholly an objection. As you've said, you've read it. It was more in relation to the two particular conditions where the applicants hadn't sort of produced any sort of additional measures in relation to the prevention of public nuisance for those particular hours, and those were namely conditions, I believe, 22 and 31. Which, in my opinion, needed to be amended, changed, or potentially even removed and replaced with something different to reflect the changes that may be granted if deemed suitable by the subcommittee. I don't have much else to say on top of that, other than that obviously the condition 22 specifically relates to the weekend alcohol sales being in line with the night tube running, and in my opinion that should stay the same if granted. Obviously that condition would then need to be amended. I don't have much else to say. Obviously PC Davis has covered a lot of what I would have also said. There's no point repeating what's already been said.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. Yes, and appreciate the no need for repetition. Thank you. I was just going to kick off with one question, if I may, to PC Davis. You talk about maximum capacity for the area. Can you please just elaborate on that a little bit, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the committee's made the decision to grant the extension for 1 year. Having worked on RBKC since '93, and I'm retiring soon, by the way, and my experience of that locality and the ebbs and flows in relation to its use, having walked on the beat back in the day, having been a response driver and dealing with the types of characters, I feel that obviously in line with supporting the midnight policy of extension of hours, mindful of the 1 hour, is that for it to kind of open any longer than what's been stipulated and what's been agreed is likely to undermine the licensing objectives by virtue of people attending and seeing it as a destination. There's numerous hostels, there's numerous locations locally that will kind of gravitate to that location, which potentially is a concern.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you. I just want to say thank you also for your many years' experience contributing to the committee, and I'm not sure when you are retiring, but best of luck with that. You will be missed. So thank you for answering that question. That was very helpful. Councillor Rossi, Councillor Wason, any questions, please, to the responsible authorities?
Yeah. If I could just ask a general question to the police officer Davis, is that in an area like that where we know there is a lot of ASB, there is begging, there is street drinking, all the rest of it. It is often, how difficult is it to, I mean, how often, I would say, can you be venue specific about where the problems are coming from? Or is it just, you know, do you know, or is it just a kind of cumulative thing? Or, you know, is it, can you ever sort of pinpoint and say it's coming from that nightclub or whatever? Or is it just a sort of a general thing that a lot of maybe venues are contributing to, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, of late, there's been a massive shift in relation to licensed activity along the Earls Court Road. Recent premises subject expedited reviews was a nightclub venue, which I care not to name, but I'm sure everyone's aware of. That's ceased operating. There's other premises that ceased operating. Simple reason by the virtue of premises not operating beyond that, and it is nigh on impossible to say, well, it's a specific premises, because one could say, you know, you've bought the alcohol, say at 8 o'clock, you've decided to walk out of your house or your home and decide to drink on the street at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and by virtue of the premises being open, you say, well, you know, they may or may not have got it from there. It is a bit of a subjective question. But what I would say, in my humble experience and opinion, is by virtue of that light being on, for want of a better word, you know, there is a propensity for people to go there, to kind of do it a little bit later, to kind of stay on the street later. Obviously, during the summer months, when it's a lot warmer, you know, which could, in my opinion, impact the licensing objectives. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rossi. Thank you, PC and Davis. Councillor Wason, any questions before we turn to the Mr. Malin for his questions?
No questions from me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malin. Any questions?
You'll be pleased to hear I have no questions. Thank you, Councillor.
For either party. Okay, thank you. Now to the objectors. Councillor Wade, Councillor Spalding, any questions, please, for the responsible authorities?
No questions from me, Chairman.
Thank you.
No questions from me.
Thank you. So now we move to the objectors section, please. Who would like to go first? Councillor Wade, Councillor Spalding?
If I could go first, because I've got
Councillor Wade can go first. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I think despite the extraordinary circumstances of this year, this business has not contacted me as a ward councillor or as chair of Nevern Square Residents Association to arrange a meeting once since it's received its licence. In fact, since it's received any form of licence, I think the last time it contacted me was in 2017. It's hard to see any of the notifications because there are no windows. And picking up on something that Councillor Spalding said, one of the reasons why people might find the venue attractive is because there are no windows and there are no doors, unlike Cafe Nero just down the road, which does have windows and it does have a door. In its licensing, and I come back to this cleaning outside the premises because it is in a vulnerable location and you might sweep it, but it does need to be washed. And I do have one question because I did a little bit of market research. You sell Kestrel beer cans. I've been into all of the places in Earls Court and I cannot find any other venue that sells Kestrel beer in cans, but I have found them in the planters outside the Earls Court Health and Wellbeing Centre, which would indicate that these cans have been sold to people who would be drinking in the street. So, and if you can find another venue, because I did go and search the aisles, I think they thought I was slightly suspicious. The presence of an all-night alcohol selling venue will further contribute to congregation, and this is what I picked up from Ian Davison, that actually that we have, it is a vulnerable location. The lights will cause people to congregate there. And I think that for the amount of money that he's going to make for 7 hours, I really don't think it's going to make him contribute to his financial viability. The streets off Earls Court Road are residential, and we do have rough sleepers, and they do buy alcohol. And so ASB and the street life continues on beyond 2 o'clock. And the question has been raised by a number of residents from your late submission that they're concerned that they've got to try and contact the people that they hear in the street that are making the noise and contact noise and nuisance. That's not what a responsible business should be doing. It really is not the way to approach operating in. You're working with a hinterland of residents, and they really do want to feel that businesses are supporting them as they are supporting businesses. The report back from the borough wardens are indicating the true extent of ASB in Earls Court. And unfortunately, this location is pivotal to where the ASB is occurring. The CCTV camera, I'd be interested to see the extent of the coverage of the street. And because I do know that you sent it to the police. Now, we had a licensing application for another venue in Earls Court recently, and there was a promise that street drinkers would not be served, and we managed to capture them on CCTV. A person being served, and it was a member of staff who was apparently unaware of the fact the person was a street drinker, even though the manager was aware of the person being a street drinker and having been banned. And this is why I really do need to have that management plan. And the manager cannot be there the whole time. And if people are coming in and the way that your alcohol is displayed does make it quite easy for people to pick up cans. So whether it's during the day, whether it's during the evening, or whether it's during the early hours, actually I feel that as a management you have to be more robust about how you sell alcohol. And I feel that the late minute submission made it really very difficult for residents to make comment, and this upset very many people. I would ask the committee to turn this application down. I feel that these are unusual times. Lockdown has been in place for 9 months. Very many people will not have been out at the times, residents won't be out at the times late at night and therefore would not have been able to make comment. This is an unfair time to have made an application to extend this temporary application. Thank you.
Sorry, my microphone was on mute. Thank you very much, Councillor Wade. Councillor Spalding.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be as brief as I can. On page 3, the police, and on page 4, the licensing officer are not particularly pointing to existing evidence in the shop of ASB, but they're worried about this area becoming a destination for all-night alcohol sales, because there's virtually nowhere else where you can get alcohol all night. And added to that, on page 5, we know that we've got this preponderance of recovery hostels in Earl's Court. In fact, we have 50% of the borough's severe support needs housing. And these people who need this support are at the severe end of the spectrum. They're either dependent on alcohol or drugs, or they have mental health issues as a result. And it's all these people who are trying to rehabilitate and become alcohol free, who are in all these hostels. We've got half the borough's provision, plus we've got the homelessness from several boroughs in London have all come into Earl's Court hotels. Plus we've got a lot of Home Office asylum seekers. This huge population is not particularly being supported in their rehabilitation by having direct access to premises with open doors that are selling alcohol all night. I mean, if one had planned this, one would have said it's cruel to those people who are trying to recover that you give them unlimited all-night access to alcohol when they're unsupervised on the streets. So just for that reason, the applicant said he thought it would be neutral in terms of the effect on these people, these street drinkers, but both the police and licensing say it's not going to be neutral. It'll become a destination. Next, can I refer very briefly, I've got a couple more points, to page 19. There is an existing condition, as you know, to have residents' meetings and contact with councillors, and obviously that has never happened. And so that condition really has been broken on the current licence. But there's also a condition that they should join a local crime reduction scheme. Now, I don't know if the onus is on us to tell them what it is, but we do have regular antisocial behaviour meetings sponsored by community safety officers in the borough, which the police attend, the residents attend, and the wardens of all of these hostels attend, trying to grapple with this problem of recovering alcoholics. But this premises has never made any attempt to ask to join those meetings. And they do take place regularly, and I would say these premises should attend those meetings. Finally, last 2 points, page 21 of your pack shows a plan of the premises. And there you can clearly see the layout, that there's open access from the street, but the staff are all retained behind that counter on the right-hand side, which is a raised counter, which has screens round it. And they can't, it's very difficult for them to get out of that protected area to get to the doors. Therefore, this premises is extremely vulnerable because there's no door control at all. And then finally, on page 27, the applicant's form has been filled up to say how, under section M, how additional steps to promote the licensing objectives. I think this is key to the attitude of this premises completely, and this applicant, that they are just not aware of their obligations and their duties to the residential community, because they say no additional measures are proposed. And the existing conditions address all the objectives, i.e. they're relying on you, Chairman, and the committee to say what the control should be on this premises, because they don't think anything extra is needed. They're just quite happy to go with what you tell them. And so they have never had meetings. They don't clean adequately. They said, oh yes, there are lots of clinics in the area that close at 6 p.m, but that's not the problem. They did not acknowledge the presence of all these hostels, which are supposed to be helping people to recover from alcoholism. And we have 50% of the borough's load, and no consideration of that has been made whatsoever. So I would then please beg the committee not to change this licence at all. I just think this is a cynical move. Finally, Mr. O'Malley said, don't take into consideration anything related to COVID. He begged you not to do that. And then he went on to say the only reason we're applying today is because of COVID, and we need to boost our sales by £100 a night. Well, if it's only £100 a night, there are other ways they could boost their sales, which are not going to have this dramatic effect on the community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spalding. I'm going to just ask one question to both of you, but before I do, just to clarify, I believe you referred to Mr. Richardson as a licensing officer. Just to clarify, Mr. Richardson is an environmental health officer from the noise and nuisance team, and although the departments work closely, they are separate. Thank you. Just to clarify that. My question to both the objections. Thank you very much for attending today. Many of the objectors who aren't here, so I hope I can ask you, talk about urination in the street in the general area, and obviously we're looking at an individual premises here, but we've all, I think, acknowledged that the area as a whole has several concerns, and just wondering about your views on that. You're asking the applicant to partake in, or suggesting that the applicant partakes in many more community endeavours, and so I was just wondering, from your point of view as a councillor, what your view is about some of those other issues that objectors brought up. Thank you. I don't know if Linda or Malcolm wants to answer.
I think one of the interesting things is when I mentioned about the planters by the Earls Court Health and Wellbeing Centre, which is in Hogarth Road, which is opposite on the other side of Earls Court Road. One of the reasons why an application was made for NCIL funding for higher planters was the degree of urination, and that's in fact where I found most of the beer cans. So it's the consequence of street drinking, all right, so that you have the main irritation that residents have is that they feel that the quality of their life, the quality of where they live is reduced, not only by people kind of crashed out in doorways, but it's also about urination, people just being drunk, not feeling safe because of it. If you have, and Councillor Spalding and myself both agreed that if this becomes a destination location, you'll have more people coming when we're actually actively, whether the police, the borough wardens, all trying to reduce the problem of ASB. And we feel that that's what the residents want. You wouldn't have got so many objections otherwise. They feel that the quality of their life is being diminished by venues that are selling alcohol as late. And I apologise to Mr. Shah, but with a management style of staffing which appears to be lax with whom they're selling alcohol to.
Thank you for answering that, Councillor Wade. I have no further questions. Councillor Wason, Councillor Rossi?
No further questions.
No further.
I'm going to turn now to the responsible authorities. Do you have any questions, please, for the objectors?
No questions from the police. Thank you very much, Chair.
Mr. Richardson?
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Malin, any questions?
I have no questions, although I did note that I think that the councillors raised some questions within their submissions. I don't know whether you want us to address those or whether what you've already heard from me previously addresses those queries, those questions raised by the councillors. I don't know how you want to.
I think some of them should be addressed briefly if possible, and I also have something else that also came up regarding the condition 22 and condition 31, which Mr. Richardson raised. So while you're addressing those councillors, the council objectors, maybe you could also address those as well. Thank you.
I'm more than happy to do so. It might assist proceedings perhaps if Councillor Spalding and Councillor Wade just went through the specific questions that they wanted answers to, because I think that some of the matters raised were more comments rather than specific questions. So would you be happy to do that, Councillors Wade and Spalding?
I would prefer it if it was done very briefly, just because we've already had the questions, and I thought you were happy to answer them, Mr.
Okay. Well, to answer the specific questions about the submissions being late, they weren't late. We don't accept that there was any disadvantage to any residents, and we can see that quite clearly by the number of objections received, not only from individuals but also from resident associations. We also don't accept the premise in relation to the meetings. This was explained in our written submissions, and that the meeting needs to take place by January, and that a meeting will be arranged in December. It is also not correct that in relation to, I think the words used were begging in relation to COVID. I made it quite clear in my oral submissions that the reason for the application and the reason for need, etc., was not a licensing objective, and I was only addressing that as a matter of courtesy, and that we weren't suggesting that these premises should be given a late license purely on the fact of COVID. What we are saying quite clearly is that these premises have the right in law to apply to vary their license. This application is not a review of that license. This application is in relation to specific hours between 1 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and it is.
I'm going to interrupt you because I fear we really are veering now into the realms of a second submission by yourself. And
I think you're right. I could hear that myself.
Yes.
So my apologies.
But I think one of the questions that the objectors raised was why on page 27 under M were no further conditions, no additional measures proposed, which I think is quite a significant concern.
I accept that on the face of it, it's significant. But when you look at the license is full of conditions. There are very few licensed premises that have so many conditions already attached to them. It is clear within RBKC's policy and within the government guidance that conditions should only be put onto a license that are necessary and proportionate. And it is quite clear in my respectful submissions that any additional conditions put forward to by the applicant at the submission stage would not be proportionate. We do fully accept the conditions that were sent to all interested parties yesterday or the day before yesterday, in terms of changing certain conditions. But in our original submission, it was felt that those conditions would necessarily have to be changed if the application were to be granted.
Okay, understood. And condition 22 about the late night tube running and the tube not running now, that was brought up?
It was brought up. In our submission, well, look, we are happy for that condition to remain to be extended as suggested by the environmental health officer. I think that he has made a suggestion in relation to that.
Yes, I think Mr. Richardson, if we could just bring you back in here for that, because I think actually his suggestion was actually to change it if the committee were minded to grant the 24 hours, then obviously condition 22 would be null and void. But my question is, if the committee were not minded to grant the 24 hours, does that condition still stay in?
Hi, Councillor. my submission was, if it was to be granted for 24 hours, I think that condition would need to be amended, and also if it wasn't granted, then obviously that condition was put on for a reason, and I don't see that there's any reason why it should be taken off. It was there for. I wasn't at the hearing when it was put on, so I don't know the reasons why.
It's not a review of the license, so I understand. No. I just don't know if Mr. Malin wanted to jump in here for a moment.
Only to say that I agree with Mr. Richardson and what he's just said.
Fantastic. Right. So now we're going to turn to our legal team, please, to see if you have any questions to any of the parties, please, about any of the matters that have arisen during this hearing.
Thank you, Chair. Before I go into the suggested conditions, I just wanted to check if the committee were minded to grant this application, would this temporary licence, would the previous temporary licence be surrendered in light of this temporary licence? Mr. O'Malley.
Yes, it would.
Thank you. That was the only questions I had, but when you're ready to go on to the conditions, I can do that.
Sorry, Richard. Why don't you carry on with the conditions now?
Thank you. Right, so the draft suggested conditions were circulated yesterday, and they're just part of the procedure, and they're only if the committee is minded to grant, so they don't they're not to be taken for granted. What I wanted to do was, you've got them on the screen. Great, thank you. Right, so I wanted to ask Mr. O'Malley whether he was happy with the first one, which was just for the duration of this temporary licence to delete existing condition 9, because I think it'd be redundant anyway.
That's
just say yes or no to each one, please.
Yes.
Then obviously existing condition 22 would need to be suspended, deleted during the duration of this licence. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
That's to do with the sales on Fridays and Saturdays. Condition 25, as it stands at the moment, it says after 11 p.m, no super strength beers, lagers, ciders or spirits, etc. can be sold. But obviously, if it's going to go to 24 hours, I've put between 11 p.m. and 8 a.m. the following day. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Going on to condition 26, same scenario. Rather than after midnight, I've changed it to between midnight and 8 a.m. No single cans to be sold. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
And condition 31, that's obviously the 2 members of staff to be extended to 8 o'clock in the morning rather than stopping at 2. Are you okay with that?
I have one suggestion or one comment on that. The way that the shifts work at the store, the changeover for the morning period is 5 o'clock in the morning. So we're in the hands of the committee, but if the committee were minded to grant, we would request that the legal requirement, it is, to be fair, usual practice that there's at least 2 members of staff anyway. We'd have a legal requirement that there's 2 members of staff that would be between 11 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning, just to coincide with the changeover of their shifts.
Okay, so then from 5 a.m. onwards, it will be 1 person, unless you're...
Well, and just to emphasise, it would only be 1 person in law, but of course, ordinarily, there is always more than there is, there is usually more than 1. It's just really just to cover if, for example, and sometimes does occur where members of staff are running late in the morning.
Okay, and then turning to the number 0.6, this is what I'm suggesting as a permanent condition on the licence, so it would continue beyond the temporary licence. I noticed that there were conditions relating to collections and waste, but it wasn't one relating to delivery. So are you happy with the delivery condition to be permanently put on the licence?
I would need to take instructions from my client. My apologies. That I'm not aware of their specific delivery times. And what occurs to me is I think there might be deliveries of newspapers and certain foodstuffs that come before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, and if you could also ask, one other thing that occurred to me whilst during the course of the meeting or the hearing was there doesn't appear to be a staff training condition on the licence. Would your client be willing to add to the licence permanently a standard staff training condition?
So if the variation is granted on a temporary basis,
yeah,
we'd be happy to have a staff training condition on a permanent basis.
Okay, so you're happy for that one. Do you want to speak to your client about the delivery?
Mr. Shah, are you still on the?
Yes, I'm happy with that. What you're saying. Just we have a milk delivery and we have a newspaper delivery, which we don't have control.
What time do they generally? What time are those deliveries generally at then?
It depends nowadays. Sometimes 6 o'clock in the morning, just newspaper come and the magazines come, and the milk delivery come around 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. That's it from me, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to turn to our governance officers, please, to see if anything has been raised during the course of this meeting.
I have nothing further to add. Thank you, Chairman. It's Anne. Right.
Thank you very much. And just finally to our licensing officer, Mr. Phelan, anything that you need to draw our attention to before the committee withdraws?
No, there's nothing further from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as you know, there is no summing up. And so we have now reached the end of the meeting. And the committee has all the information we need to adjourn to a private session and make our decision. We will not announce the decision today. Instead, the hearing will close and the live broadcast will end. But a summary of the decision will be sent to all parties within 5 working days of today's hearing, and a full decision will follow as soon as possible thereafter. Thank you all very much for attending. This hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.